Captain Barron.
Doc, how you doing?
Very good. What are we talking about?
This week we're talking about the new Marvel film, Captain America: Brave New World.
Indeed. Are you feeling brave?
Let's see. Should I jump into a synopsis?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. In Captain America: Brave New World, Anthony Mackie dons the iconic shield as Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, navigating the turbulent waters of heroism in a world that's as unpredictable as ever. When newly elected President Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, played by Harrison Ford, seeks to exploit a newly discovered metal called adamantium, found on the remnants of this celestial something or other in the Indian Ocean, Wilson is thrust into a geopolitical storm. As nations vie for control over the powerful resource, an assassination attempt at a global summit reveals a deeper conspiracy, leading Wilson to confront the enigmatic Dr. Samuel Stearns, played by Tim Blake Nelson. Dr. Samuel Stearns' intellect has been dangerously amplified by exposure to something like gamma radiation. I don't know. Who cares? Directed by Julius Onah, the film delves into themes of power, legacy, and the moral complexities of leadership. Onah mentions a connection to the themes of the film and his immigrant background. Mackie's portrayal of Wilson captures the internal struggles of a hero stepping into a monumental legacy, while Ford brings a grizzled gravitas to President Ross, a leader with his own hidden battles. Brave New World attempts to redefine the mantle of Captain America and what it means to truly be a hero.
And does it succeed, Barron, in attempting to do all those things that you said it was attempting to do?
No, I don't think it does. It's a convoluted mess and falls really flat, in my opinion. And where maybe there was a chance for some of that complexity to have meaning and depth, they just skim right over it.
Yeah, that's fair. Look, I'm going to be a little controversial.
Good.
And say, while I completely agree, it's an absolute mess, one best forgotten, parts of it I kind of liked.
Okay, what did you like? I'm curious.
Well, I liked, you mentioned in the synopsis, geopolitics, corruption, all this sort of human stuff. And I liked that the Marvel world, after the, all this multiverse nonsense, has kind of come back to home and contracted. It's like the, do you remember in Australia we had in the Keating years, the recession we had to have?
Right.
And now Trump is talking about, we do need to, we might need to go backwards before we go forwards.
Oh, right. Yeah, cool.
This is what it feels like to me. Like it really, there was nowhere to go when you can do everything in the multiverse. And now they've just taken it back to politics, real life, and a kind of human hero and a human president.
That's a great point. They have tried to ground it. They've tried to make it about a hero who has none of the powers of his predecessor and has to make do. So, he can't just go out there and just, kick ass because he's got these sort of God-given or whatever, gamma radiation-given powers.
Yeah.
He has to grind and it's hard and he has imposter syndrome and all of that to deal with. And then you've got this backdrop of, like you said, politics, nations trying to fight over resources. And then I think probably for me, the most intriguing part of the whole film was the Dr. Stern character and his sort of riddle-like nature or his mastermind nature. But that, unfortunately, was probably the least fleshed out part of the whole story.
Yeah. I've just sort of driven you into having to say some good things about it. But let's go back to the negatives and start there. And I think you've hit the negative on the head with that character. It could have been so great.
Yeah.
Like, what was he all into stats and probability and that sort of crap?
Yep.
Like it was a well thought through character, but it's as if they either just didn't bother and he was, just symbolic, or they shot a whole lot of great stuff that they didn't include.
Easily could be the case because it was still long, but it didn't feel as gratuitous as some of the other Marvel films. Yeah, I think that what you're picking up on as this character has some well thought out stuff behind it probably comes from source material. That's my opinion. I haven't read the source material, so I could be getting way ahead of myself, but it felt like maybe there was great material there and they just didn't do a very good job of adapting it.
Yeah, gotcha.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, and it's not the only thing they didn't do a really good job of adapting. It seems as though Anthony Mackie did a great job adapting into his new role as, who is he?
Captain America.
Captain America.
It really stuck with you, huh?
Yeah, it did. I don't feel I really got to know who he is, who the bloke is, behind the wings.
Yeah. As a performance, it's a charming performance.
Indeed.
And I think he understood that he had to be likable and that he had to be someone who's way out of their depth, but that you're still rooting for. And he had to be funny at times because there's gags in there, which I kind of felt like they fell a bit flat, but it was a noble attempt. So I kind of felt for him. I think he was trying really hard to make this role work and be memorable, but the whole film lets him down.
Yeah, completely. And I think that he succeeds despite it all. Like I found him unbelievably much more relatable than most Marvel Universe heroes, including his predecessor.
Yeah, well, no, that's true. Yeah,
even though he had no script to work with, not really a decent film to work with, but the bloke kind of capped. I was with him, and I think he carried it despite having a crappy script and film all around him.
What do you think about Harrison Ford?
I'm not sure he gave his all into this role, but a little...
When was the last time Harrison Ford gave his all?
Okay. Well, even though he didn't give his all...
That's me. Sorry, Harrison.
I'm gonna give a pro to Harrison here that even not giving his all, he gave a lot to the film.
Yes.
Like a 10% of Harrison Ford is a lot to give in a movie that perhaps doesn't deserve him.
Yep.
And I actually got old school Harrison Ford vibes from it. I felt like I was watching the guy from The Fugitive or something like that.
Clear and Present Danger or something like that.
That Harrison Ford era.
Totally.
And I think that's because the whole film reminded me of a bygone era. And that comes back to the, almost going backwards and grounding it in, the Superman movies of the 80s or Bond films.
Yes.
And all Harrison Ford action films. It just seemed like harking back to a simpler time when the American president sort of meant something in that way and that sort of thing.
Yeah, there were... So this is what's confusing about this film is there's chunks of the film that feel like it's trying to do that. And then there's a whole section that feels like it's trying to do a crime mystery thing.
Yeah.
With the other actor that I wanted to mention, whose name is just escaping, Tim Blake Nelson.
Yes. Who you can barely see.
Tim Blake Nelson sounds on paper like the perfect casting choice for this character. And yet I just was so disappointed by what we got of him in the end. But anyway, that whole thing, those storylines, they're compelling. They still work. I still want to see those sorts of films. And then we've got alien something or other that's landed in the ocean that looks like a giant person for some reason. Sorry, Marvel fans. I don't know why that's there. And it's got a special medal in it. Everybody's fighting over this sort of science fiction premise And then we've got, Red Hulk appearing out of nowhere. Like, just there's so many things that are Marvel things that kind of ruin the rest of it for me,
Yeah, they did. I'm forgiving those because I thought they were obviously just inserted to make it feel just a little tiny bit like the Marvel Universe when otherwise it was some superhero script that had been left on the floor in the 80s.
Sure, it still has to be all that stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they included them in a way that didn't mess up what could have been a good film otherwise. The MacGuffin in the ocean, whatever, I don't even know what it was, but, it clearly existed for a reason. The Red Hulk was you have to tie these things up somehow, and if you're going to put all your CGI in the end in a sort of hulky thing that pays off for people who like that crap.
Because it all has to come down to punching in the end. That's like every Marvel film ever. Like whatever we're doing, whatever the premise, whatever the MacGuffin, whatever the bad guy is this time, or the space thing, or whatever, it's always going to come down to we're all just going to punch it out. We will punch it out in the street. We'll ruin a bunch of buildings. We'll destroy cars, and then someone will win the punch out. The good guy will win the punch out, and that's it.
Yeah, except that I don't think we'd gone to a stage where we'd lost the punch out in favour of the stupid stuff where they just put their hands in the air and beams of light come out of hands.
Oh yeah,
that's one I don't like, and that's remember the Eternals. That was peak.
Yeah.
Just.
But that's just punching with other things.
With other things. yeah. No,
Anyway.
that's true.
Okay. Hey, I think Marvel's cooked. I think it's done.
I think it's just started again.
You really?
I do.
This though, or just in general, it's they're formulating a comeback.
I think this represents the green shoots.
Oh my God! Of what though?
Well, of something. Now,
Right.
I don't know if this grows into a beautiful flower or a weed. Probably a weed, but I think the last universe is over. It was had the weed killer on it. We then had the Deadpool that was just making fun of the wasteland.
Yep.
And this is starting again, and I'm just interested to see where it goes.
Yeah. I mean, the slate though is just not what it used to be. You used to get whatever 10, 12, 15 Marvel films in a year, and now we're sort of, there's long gaps between them. You might get 1 or 2 in a year, it seems.
Hooray.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, great. But that's not a good sign for them, I would have thought.
Well, I think it's the recession that we had to have.
Great. Great. I love it.
One final thing.
Yeah.
Anthony Mackie walking in to the White House for the first time, feeling like imposter syndrome, going somewhere where he's sort of not meant to be with his mate, who was a good performance too. He reminded me so much of Eddie Murphy.
Oh, wow. Okay. In which film?
Well, this is ridiculous, but I haven't seen Coming to America.
Okay.
But I've seen, I can just picture Eddie Murphy walking into somewhere, and I picture him coming to America. And it felt like that's what he was doing. And that was the moment when there wasn't much humor, but I started to see what Anthony Mackie could bring to the character.
Yeah.
Because he sort of had this Murphy sort of confidence about him and like playfulness.
Yeah. I actually thought, you know what, if you were going to compare it to another actor, I was thinking Will Smith. He had like a Will Smith charm and confidence about him, but in a very kind of, Will Smith, particularly younger Will Smith, had that really relatable quality to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I actually thought he was pretty good. It's just, I reckon this was a tough gig.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I think that this film kind of speaks for itself, and that the more interesting stuff will come from what we were reminded of.
Okay, should we start on that?
I reckon we should dig into it.
And I'm going to start because you did the last synopsis.
Yes, please.
And I'm going to talk about, drum roll, Spider-Man Far From Home.
Another Marvel film.
Take
it away.
So, Spider-Man Far From Home in 2019, directed by John Watts, Peter Parker, portrayed by Tom Holland, yearns for a break from his superhero responsibilities following the events of Avengers Endgame. Hoping to enjoy a normal European school trip with friends and confess his feelings to MJ, played by the pretty cute Zendaya, Peter's plans are upended when Nick Fury recruits him for a mission. Teaming up with Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, played by aka Gyllenhaal, Peter faces elemental creatures wreaking havoc across Europe. Grappling with Tony Stark's legacy and blurring lines between illusion and reality, Peter must step up as a hero, navigating heroism, deception, and teenage love.
Yeah, it sounds like the film.
It's the film. Do you remember this one?
Why AKA Gyllenhaal? That made me laugh.
I was kind of riffing
Great, I love it.
because Jake Gyllenhaal plays Mysterio.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's not really AKA Gyllenhaal. It's oh no, it is.
Cool. Hey, I rewatched this film with my girls.
Yes,
and I think we all really enjoyed it. It's pretty fun.
it is. It is pretty fun.
Yeah, it's light, but that's kind of what's good about it. You know, like it's not trying to be too serious. And I think Tom Holland is super charming. Zendaya is super charming. It's just a nice romp. That's what it feels like. It's not trying to be more than that.
Yes, and the reason I'm talking about this film, aside from the fact that Spider-Man is my favourite, always has been.
All of the Spider-Mans?
No, just Spider-Man as a superhero.
As a character, got you.
Yeah, from childhood, he was my man.
Yeah, cool.
So this is another kind of reset film. This happened after all the Avengers nonsense and everyone died, and similar to Captain America, where they're trying to pick up the pieces, and Captain America is taking over. We got Anthony Mackie taking over from the last bloke.
Yep.
And this one sees Peter Parker attempting to, take over from where
Tony Stark
left
trying
off.
to step into the big shoes.
Yes.
And feeling imposter syndrome to the max, probably more so, I would say, or at least being more open about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly where the difference.
So halfway through the episode, our microphones just switched off for no apparent reason. The camera recorded the rest of the sound, and we put an AI pass over it, and I think it sounds okay. Please enjoy the rest of the episode.
In these films lies for me when you're talking about the imposter syndrome. Like that's the similarity, but in Spider-Man, like they really lean into that, and the whole film is you're right with him as a man or a boy, trying his best to navigate these big shoes to fill, as well as a life, like trying to get the girl, have a friend, just cope with being a teenager. So we know who he is, and therefore we relate to him, and therefore it all makes sense.
Yeah. There's a lot more to work with in this film, and it's handled really well. You understand the stakes. He's got a really clear arc, and it all kind of works, doesn't it? And he's aside from, I think the problem with what we had to deal with in Captain America is that Mackie had to use his charm and his personality and his internal doubts to sort of take us on the journey, whereas in Spider-Man, there's a lot there that's just that's not about just the character. There's the girl he's trying to get. There's the fact that he's actually a teenager on a school trip, trying to be a man in this big bad world. There's a lot going on there that he can use, and that the writers and storytellers can use to make the story work. That just gives them so much more. And I think they weave all those elements really well.
Yeah, well, that's all true, but by the same token, if you work back from that, that's the film they've ended up with this film that is rich and has all these things, and that's because they've decided to extract those possibilities from the ether.
Yeah, they've set themselves up for a more successful story.
Exactly. But look at Anthony Mackie at Captain America. Like, it's just as rich or richer.
Yeah.
Like he's the first, to me, non-token black hero. Like I'm discounting the Black Panther because I didn't like that film.
Okay, fair enough.
I thought that was all token, but this is
sure. I see what you're saying. Yeah, it was the way it was sort of approached as well.
It was like it was just almost a diversity and inclusion film to me. Whereas this, he's in there because he's the best. He's the man for the job, but also that just gives the opportunity to explore
his life, and like all we get of like his circle really is his mate who's good, you know, in the gym. But there could be so much backstory and a different vibe and injected into the film.
Yeah.
You know, just because this is a big groundbreaking that he's the main man.
No, you're right. I'm letting the writers off lightly here. No, you're right. There's plenty of that. There's plenty of good stuff there that they could have worked with. It does feel like the whole thing is just skimming the surface, and that's the problem. The film doesn't therefore resonate because the depth isn't there.
Yeah, we're getting back to Captain America.
Yeah, I know. We're back there.
Back on
That's okay. I mean, the two things kind of talk to each other. That's why we're doing this. Back to Spider-Man.
Show.
Yeah.
Well, I've got more to say about Spider-Man. Did you have anything else that you loved or hated?
I liked how, like Captain America, Tony Stark's character is there, like a ghost of Tony Stark is there the whole way through, and you don't see him.
Yes.
But his presence is really there, and you feel that in both films. This one, it just works better.
Yeah.
Because you actually think, well, Tony Stark is irreplaceable. You know, like you do have that strong feeling. Whereas Captain America, I don't, you know, aside from the fact that he's just got the muscles and speed and what the reflexes, like, so, you know, it's not got much to do with who he is or his personality. People probably out there disagree entirely, but, you know, it doesn't come across for me in the films that way.
No, they just sort of mention his name a couple of times. I don't even know what his name is.
Yeah.
But you're right. In Spider-Man, Tony Stark is everywhere, both as the shoes that Peter's trying to fill, but he's also he's inciting the villain.
That's right.
So, the Mysterio character is doing all this because Tony Stark stuffed him around.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's almost an Iron Man film.
Yeah, it's layered so much better, isn't it?
Speaking of the villain,
yes.
the other thing I was reminded of by Captain America.
Yeah.
When I watched Captain America, I was reminded of movies that deal with mind control and have that device as the villain's kind of weapon.
Yep.
And at first I was thinking of the James Bond films or Maxwell Smart. It's a very sort of old device.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, what's a good film that's perfect for this? And Spider-Man kind of is almost the modern day version of mind control because it's Jake Gyllenhaal's creating illusions and fake news out in the ether. So he's basically playing with our minds, but in a perhaps not a more sophisticated, but a more today way.
Yeah. Yeah. He's spinning, it's marketing, CG to, all this distractions and illusions to kind of, tell a story. The guy from, what's his name? Is it Stern? The villain?
The double barrel surname.
Yeah. From Captain America. I mean, he's trying to run the show with his superior intellect. It's very sort of shallow the way they go about it, but you get the same. It's the same sort of net effect. He's this many steps ahead. He's creating a story. He's making people do things that he wants them to do. The Gyllenhaal version is just so much more fun, I think. Not that it's fun because of the way they've executed it. I still think that the Stern character, Dr. Stern, could have been great.
Good.
Like, there's so much there that you can do with a character that's that intellectual that they're like, 7, 8, 10 moves ahead all the time. And I feel like they just fumbled this one. There's so much that was there.
Yeah. Just to close out Spider-Man, I'm not suggesting that it's a masterpiece.
No.
Or anything. I think it has strong links to Captain America. Just does things generally in a very, very competent, well thought through way. And it just works. It's not the best film ever, but it
does. I think I'd kind of forgotten most of it from the first time I saw it. But when I rewatched it, I thought, it's not a very memorable film for me, but it's enjoyable. And that's great. That's fine. You know, like it's ticking the boxes for what it needs to do.
Now, we were talking about villains, and I think your next reminds me of might have something to do with the villain as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was watching this film, I was thinking, Captain America I'm talking about. I was thinking, you know, this villain has the potential to be great. Now, if they had taken this villain to the nth degree and really milked him for everything that he was worth, I'm just imagining milking Dr. Stern now. That's wrong. But if they had, then the film might be a little something like Zodiac from 2007. David Fincher's Zodiac is an obsessive, slow burn descent into the hunt for the Zodiac killer, a serial murderer who taunted San Francisco with cryptic letters and ciphers in the late 1960s and early 70s, told through the perspectives of crime reporter Paul Avery, played by Robert Downey Jr., police detective Dave Toschi, played by Mark Ruffalo, and newspaper cartoonist Robert Graysmith, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. It's a lot of names. The film methodically pieces together the sprawling case, capturing the frustration, dead ends, and the psychological toll of chasing a ghost. At the center is Graysmith, whose fascination with the killer turns into an all-consuming obsession long after the case has faded from public attention. Fincher strips away the usual thriller conventions, replacing them with a procedural so detailed and relentless that it mirrors the character's own descent into fixation. The film leans on paranoia, mood, and procedural minutiae over action, making it as much about obsession as it is about the crimes themselves. The 2-hour, 40-minute runtime leaves you feeling like you've lived the years of relentless investigation personally, but with a muted color palette and Fincher's signature precision, Zodiac immerses the audience in a case that to this day remains unsolved.
To this day remains unsolved. To this very day, are we going to solve this film here and now?
Solve it right now. I think it was definitely the bald guy.
You know what, though? It was the bald guy halfway through.
I know. We were pretty sure it was him halfway. They could have skipped the next hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. But I think this is your pick, so I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, cool.
Ball rolling.
I got to say that it's been a long time since I had seen this film. It popped into my head straight away. I rewatched it and I loved every freaking second of it.
Yeah.
It's quite different from other Fincher films. But like as I was getting to in the synopsis there, I think it's the precision with which he makes the film that is the same as other Fincher films. It's just that he went about it in an unusual way, in which he said, I'm going to immerse people unrelentingly into this world. It's going to be a bit uncomfortable, but just stick with me. It's worth it. And it is.
Yeah, and I loved the way he brought us into the world, piece by piece, character by character, and kind of just built it up in layers. So I've forgotten the order, but you meet the Jake Gyllenhaal character, and then gradually you get to know the Robert Downey Jr. character through each other, through the perspectives of one of the other. And then suddenly Columbo, played by Mark Ruffalo, he comes in, and that adds a little bit later and adds another really cool narrative line and dimension to it. And they all just start interplaying so beautifully. So it was really it was a lesson in how to build a world and how to build complex characters.
It's fascinating. The thing, and I think, you know, we spoke about Seven recently. There is a love of that sort of that world and the professionals that live in it that really comes through in these films. They feel so real. And while Seven's kind of heightened, this one feels just like it's not at all heightened at all. We're just in the everyday life of these people. It's just done with such love and detail that the whole thing is riveting.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that for me, same as with Seven, is the care and attention of the script, and just little things that are sort of silly and trivial, like when I think it was Mark Ruffalo steals a sandwich off Goose from Top Gun, and it's a BLT. Yeah, it's a BLT, and he picks out the tomatoes.
Taking them out. I know. It's beautiful.
And there's so many of those little things that just, again, it's just from a script 101 course, dialogue 101, but the care is so often that care isn't taken, and it's just nice to see it done right.
Yeah, one of my favorite dialogue moments, and just sort of seeing, just writing moments of the whole thing, is somebody, I forgot who it is at the newspaper, tells Gyllenhaal's character people have been calling him retard.
Yeah.
And then he's like, wait, people have been calling me retard? Is that true? And the guy sort of brushes him off. And then he goes to Robert Downey Jr.'s character and says, hey, have people been calling me names? And he goes, what, like retard? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, no. And walks away. It's the best. It's so good. It's perfect.
Yeah, simple, but perfect. And they've bothered to put it in and not cut it out.
Absolutely.
For the sake of, a few minutes.
It's great.
A few seconds. And wasn't that a great performance of Iron Man that Robert Downey Jr. gave in this film?
Yeah, really great. He's so good in it. And you see all of what's going to come out in Iron Man and Tony Stark in this character.
Completely.
So that was a little bit of fun. When you said Spider-Man and I said Zodiac, and then we both just took a second and went, wait a second. We realized Ruffalo is Hulk. Jake Gyllenhaal is Mysterio in Spider-Man. Who am I missing here?
Downey Jr.
Downey Jr. is Tony Stark.
Yeah.
They're all just like this little cross-section of the same actors across the three films.
The three films. It's ridiculous.
It's fun.
This was not intended.
No. So
what we haven't talked about is what exactly was it that reminded you of Zodiac?
Yeah.
When you watched Captain America.
So I just thought the Zodiac, this character, makes everybody run in circles constantly. And he does it all without you ever seeing who he is. Except for when they revealed that he's the bald guy halfway through. But aside from that, it's all in the shadows. And then there's these scenes in Captain America where you first are introduced to Dr. Stern, and he's in the shadows, and you don't really know who he is, but you know he's pulling all the strings. And it only lasts for like 10 minutes. And then they reveal who he is, and he doesn't even look that scary, and nobody cares, and blah, ruined. Yeah. And I just thought, man, this whole film needed to be a lot more like Zodiac. They could have played with that character so much. He could have been like pulling all the strings left, right, and center. He could have had everybody running around. And there's a sense of like the detective story in Captain America. It's there, but they just don't use it the way the genre wants to be used,
Yeah. You could throw Seven in there as well.
Absolutely.
With just, a great villain that they're sort of trying to work out, and, ends up sort of turning himself in, essentially.
Yeah. Look, if I'm being honest, I thought of Seven first, but we talked about that recently, and then I went to Zodiac as the next one. And I'm kind of glad I did, because it was really fun to go back and dive into that.
Yeah. The detective element of superhero films is not done enough, and that's why I have some affection for the Robert Pattinson version of Batman.
Yeah,
they've really leaned heavily into that.
Yeah,
with mixed success, but I think we sort of half liked that film from memory.
Yeah, definitely. I liked it. It was good. It had ups and downs, but overall, positive, I think.
And that I guess was a very grounded Batman as well. It was, again, bringing it back to being a human and living in the real world.
Yeah. And
it perhaps could have been a really good model for what they could have done with Captain America.
Honestly, I think I think right now with this film and probably future films, Marvel's going, you know what we should be doing? What DC was doing.
Oh, wow.
But DC they've done it already. And it will seem like we're doing what DC, I think that's the obvious next place for him to go.
Yeah.
Is to just really ground it down and like make it superhuman, super, gritty. But I just don't know if they can, because DC have trodden that ground already. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it depends on timing. Like, did DC go too early when everyone actually did want the multiverse?
Yeah, maybe.
And now they're sick of the multiverse. And,
Maybe it's ripe for the taking for Marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly. Hey, you know what? We're running close to time for our next film.
Oh, we ever?
Yep.
Well, let's my closing statement would be that the Zodiac ran a bit long.
Yeah.
And I could have chopped it off halfway, and perhaps we should take that lesson and cut this one off.
A little editing never hurts. Okay, let's do that. We're about to go and see Mickey 17, which I'm really excited about. Director Bong's next film.
Yeah.
Shall we go do that?
Yes, we will. So yeah.